Gary Plauché was by every measure a normal man. He was a former U.S. Air Force sergeant, a salesman, a father of 4. He coached his kids' sports teams. He went to church. He drank at the local bar on weekends. He was the kind of guy everyone in Baton Rouge recognized and liked. In 1983, Gary's 11-year-old son, Jody, started taking karate lessons at a local studio. His instructor was a 25-year-old man named Jeffrey Doucette, confident, charming, well-liked in the community. Doucette became something like a big brother to Jody. He'd take the boy for drives, show up at family events, earn the trust of June Plauché, Jody's mother. He was, to all appearances, exactly what he presented himself to be. He was not. For more than a year, Jeffrey Doucette had been sexually abusing Jody Plauché, and Jody, 11 years old, terrified and manipulated, told no one. Then, on February 19, 1984, Doucette came to the Plauché home. He told June he was taking Jody out for a quick drive. They'd be back in 15 minutes. They didn't come back. Not that night, not the next day, not the day after that. The FBI was called. A nationwide search began. Gary Plauché sat in his house in Baton Rouge, not knowing if his son was alive or dead, not knowing where he was, not knowing why. The 10 most helpless days of his life passed like an open wound. Then, 10 days in, Doucette allowed Jody to call his mother from a motel room in Anaheim, California. The FBI had the phone tapped. They traced the call in seconds. California police raided the motel and found Jody, alive, traumatized. They also found Doucette, who they arrested without resistance. On the plane ride back to Louisiana, Doucette confessed to raping Jody and admitted he had molested other children as well. Jody was returned to his family on March 1, 1984, and Gary Plauché learned in brutal and specific detail exactly what Jeffrey Doucette had done to his 11-year-old son. He told his friend afterwards, "I didn't know what to do. I felt completely helpless." But Gary Plauché was already making a decision. While drinking at the Cotton Club, his local bar, Gary happened to run into an executive from WBRZ-TV, the local ABC affiliate. The man told Gary, casually, that Jeffrey Doucette would be flown back to Baton Rouge to face trial on March 16th, American Airlines Flight 595, arriving at 9:30 p.m. Gary Plauché put down his drink, went home, and began to plan. On March 16th, he arrived at Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses as a disguise. He positioned himself at a bank of payphones directly across from where the cameras were set up. He had a .38 snub-nosed revolver in his right boot. He called his best friend Jimmy and stayed on the line. Then he waited. At 9:30 p.m., Jeffrey Doucette walked off the plane in handcuffs, escorted by 2 deputies. News cameras immediately turned to capture him. Doucette walked past the cameras. Then he walked past the payphones, and Gary Plauché, watching the reflection of the camera lights on the wall, whispered into the phone, "Here he comes. He reached down into his boot, pulled out the .38 revolver, spun around, and fired a single hollow-point bullet into the right side of Jeffrey Doucette's skull from 3 feet away. Doucette collapsed, blood spreading across the airport floor. Gary Plauché lowered the gun, turned back to the phone, hung it up, and waited. A deputy rushed over, a man who knew Gary personally, and grabbed him, asking, "Why, Gary, why?" Gary Plauché, calm as a man who had just finished a job he'd started, answered, "If somebody did it to your kid, you'd do it too." Jeffrey Doucette fell into a coma and died the following day. Jeffrey Doucette never had his day in court, but neither, in any meaningful sense, did Gary Plauché. He was charged with second-degree murder.
Psychiatric evaluations found that Gary had experienced a kind of temporary psychological break, that in that moment he genuinely could not distinguish right from wrong. His defense argued that he had been driven to a state of temporary psychosis by the knowledge of what had been done to his son. The judge agreed that Gary posed no threat to the community. Gary pled no contest to manslaughter. He was sentenced to 7 years, suspended, 5 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, which he completed at his church, mowing the lawn. He served 0 days in prison. The American public was overwhelmingly on his side. Gary became to many people a symbol, the father who did what every parent secretly fears they might do. But here is the detail that haunts this story. Jody, his son, was initially furious at his father. At 11 years old, Jody had been so thoroughly manipulated and groomed by Doucette that part of him still saw the man as a friend. He'd wanted the abuse to stop, not for Doucette to die. Years later, Jody would become a sexual abuse awareness activist. He wrote a memoir called Why, Gary, Why? He works to this day to protect children from predators. He has said of his father, "I understand why he did what he did. I can't condone it, but I understand it. And in the end, he was the greatest dad of all time." Gary Plauché died in 2014 at the age of 68. He maintained until his last breath that he had no regrets. 1 shot, 1 second, no prison time, and a country divided forever over whether justice had been served or destroyed.